You're listening to Kizuki, the podcast. I'm Mae Yoshikawa, and I define the Japanese concept of Kizuki as the following. Kizuki. 1. A moment of epiphany, an aha of realization or insight which opens the knower to a new dimension of truth that was formerly unknown. 2. Steps in an incremental growth of awareness, resulting in a movement from ignorance to greater awareness of the bigger picture. A kind of knowing that cannot be undone, that cannot be unrealized. As a longtime yoga and meditation practitioner, a world traveler, and curious self-explorer, I'm obsessed with Kizukis. Listen on each week for inspiring and enlightening stories that may just tip you over for your next aha. On this week's episode, No More Pedestals. Have you ever watched the world come to a realization, all at once, that someone they trusted isn't who they thought they were? The anger, the grief, the outrage. It's painful. But I'm not here to talk about the headlines. I'm here to talk about pedestals and the whole system of thinking that allows people to put others on pedestals. Because long before the world was arguing about power and corruption, I was growing up inside a very vertical system. Born and raised in Japan, and Japan being, like many other cultures around the world, a place and society that organizes itself very vertically. And there are rules, unseen, unspoken rules that the culture makes sure that we follow. Whether it's age, status, gender, or title. Here, even the language we use, the expression, and how we bow, the angle at which we bow might depend on your placement within this vertical system. And oh my God, I am burning with this micro Kizuki today. Micro because it's so seemingly tiny and intricate, but I'm just burning with it because it's making all the difference for me. Okay, so to put things into context, meet my nephew who grew up in the Japanese school system. And he once told me that everything was fine, A-okay, in elementary school. But the moment he entered middle school, something significantly shifted because he noticed, not because anyone told him, but because he saw and experienced that the hierarchy became real at school. This wasn't the case up to elementary, but the day he entered middle school, if his birthday was even one day later than his friends, the friend was the senpai or senior in the vertical system, and he was the younger and the junior. That might not sound significant, but in Japan, it could mean that you are expected to use different formalities in the language, expression, posture, attitude, and even responsibilities. Like maybe if you're in the basketball club and everyone finished practice and someone had to pick up all of the basketballs, for sure, it would be expected of the juniors to have that job. And the older ones were deferred to. It's subtle, but it's persistent and it's powerful. And in his case, it was crippling because it was painful. It was a system that he had to learn to navigate that he didn't, in his bones, agree to. There is something very disorienting about growing up in a system that constantly ranks you that way, whether it's above or below, or first, second, third, or before or after. I would know because I was born the youngest of 4 siblings. And I felt that vertical structure very early, even if it was just about my age. Now, many years later, I went to South India to study Ashtanga Yoga at the foundational school there. And incidentally, I was one of the first Japanese practitioners to go that deeply into the source, and then to return to Japan to teach what I was learning. Without really aiming for it, I became what people call sensei, teacher. And then for 10 years, I was the cover model for Japan's first yoga magazine, some 42 consecutive issues. I became symbolically and somewhat literally the face of yoga in Japan. I taught workshops nationwide, collaborated with big brands, and I wrote a monthly column for this magazine for a decade because I insisted I didn't want to just be the symbolic representation in the photos. I wanted people to know about how yoga was transforming me from the inside, from my mind, my being. I guess from the get-go, I wanted people to know that I was human and that I was not different from them. And still, people called me sensei. Sensei literally means saki ni ikiru. It's like the characters for one who has gone before, or one who has lived in advance, like before you. And I tell you, I have never felt comfortable being called sensei. It happens all the time still. It's just that I never really claimed that title for myself. You know, I never went to school studying to become a teacher. I just was practicing yoga because I loved it, and I started sharing it because I wanted people to know how powerful it is, how good it is, the way that it transformed my health and my life. So in the early years, it actually made me feel really resistant. I did not feel good enough to teach. I felt too young, too green, too small to own that I would be or could be a teacher of this giant lineage of yoga. It's colossal, the wisdom of yoga. How could tiny little Mae represent that in any way? And I only slowly relaxed into the role as my teachers encouraged me that I only ever need to share what I know. You know, I'm never expected to share anything I don't know. And particularly my teacher in India, when I received my authorization from him, he encouraged me to take this wisdom that I was absorbing at the feet of the guru, as they would say in India, that I could take it back to my country and share it with whoever might benefit from it there. And as I went romping on my path, doing the best I could, learning as I go, I still felt a resistance because, and this is like more energetic than anything else because it was never spelled out for me, except that I would experience it in the culture on a day-to-day basis. Because I would notice that some people, many people actually, were comfortable placing me on a pedestal. Maybe it was the fact that I was this sensei. Maybe also because they saw me on many covers of magazines. It probably wasn't everyone, I'm sure, but it was noticeable enough that I think on some deep level, I felt lonely. I felt othered. Even though it was through admiration, I wasn't always someone people wanted to be with or dine with because they put me on the pedestal, right? Like I was a little distant from them. And so I kept trying and trying and trying to tear it down, this image. For example, when I offered these yoga intensive trainings through my studio, I didn't even call them like intensive courses because I didn't position myself as the teacher. I wanted to call them study circles because I wanted to sit within the circle with them, not to hover above it as some teacher or sensei. But no matter how hard I tried, it felt like I was going against the grain of culture. And now I'm beginning to gain perspective, to understand more intricately exactly why. In Japanese culture, there's a concept called kensong. It's a form of respect, but it's not when you're uplifting others. It's when you're bringing yourself down in humility in order to elevate the other person. It's delicate and it can be beautiful, but something about the essence of that makes me a little uncomfortable because often, again, not always, but often, kensong is used not only as a form of respect, but I see people shrinking themselves under it, chopping down their own authority in the name of kensong, handing over their authorship because they're comfortable giving others responsibility and power and making themselves small within this hierarchy so that they don't have to take ownership of their role. They don't have to step into their power because they're willing to give it to someone else. Yeah, that happens. And I don't just talk about that in the sense of me having been called the sensei. I know, when I'm really honest with myself, that I've done it too, where I have unintentionally made myself small because I got comfortable giving someone else power. And I think that is the deeper aspect of this larger global conversation and confusion that we find ourselves in too, because it is such a wake-up call, such a reckoning. Not just to say, oh my God, point fingers, he's abused his power, but also to ask, how have I enabled or how have I positioned myself in such a small, lowly way that I have given over my power and authorship to someone else without having fought for it any earlier than we're coming to now? And I think that is another layer of rage because it's a reckoning of ourselves. Okay, whew. So here's the other aspect that I'm noticing, right? Because people get comfortable within this setup of vertical hierarchy. And this isn't just Japan or just Asia. It's wherever you find vertical hierarchy, you find an agreement, not only of those above using or abusing power, but also of those quote unquote below getting comfortable laying out their authorship and power and giving it away because they're more comfortable not taking responsibility for their choices or their power. Because this vertical hierarchy serves to help people manage anxiety. Here's what I mean by that. Because if someone says, yes, you're above me, then of course that person on some level is going to feel smaller. But they might also find the illusion of safety in feeling smaller because they then don't have to carry the responsibility of making decisions to author their own life at this level of sovereignty that we could potentially. What I'm putting my finger on, uncomfortably but true, is that many people, including myself, find comfort or have found comfort at one point or another in belittling themselves that way because it's easy to want to abdicate your decisive power and hope that someone else will take care of your shit for you. Someone else might, help make your life cruise on along. But what is the cost here? Because the cost is your spine. And that is a cold, hard truth. Now, by the same logic, what happens to anyone who chooses to step out of a strictly vertical hierarchy? Because there's a great potential of becoming disruptive. For example, if everyone perceives me as sensei or projects me to be some, I don't know, highly respected version of a yogic sensei, but I come along and I make mistakes and I'm imperfect and I go, I'm just human, I'm just Mae. There are times where that could unsettle the system because I am not fitting in to the role that I've been assigned to play. Because now we're level. We're all human. And me owning up to the fact that I'm just human also means it mirrors back to others that you too, also just have to own up to the fact that you are human, and whatever capabilities I have, you have too. Whatever mistakes I make, you're prone to too. And that's the thing, not just about judging each other, but also about being mirrored back truth. That when someone makes a mistake, it's a reminder that we're prone to that too. And when you see someone else making mistakes or being corrupt, that's not our cue to somehow start responding in hate, pretending like we're better than thou, right? Okay, not to condone the corruption by any means, but just a reminder that at the end of the day, from beginning to end, we're actually all always only human. And this is just the reckoning of what we had closed our eyes to for so long. Okay, just kind of reeling this back in and bringing it back to myself and my personal level here where I can stay in my personal power. Because here's the thing for me, is that I don't want students beneath me. I don't want people to follow me. I never did. I think what I'm longing for so much is just to be met where I am so that we can do the work together. I'm like inviting you to do the work together, not because I have gone before you as some sensei, but because I'm just a practitioner too. I'm learning as I go along too. And the only reason I'm happy to keep doing what I do and trailblazing and keep sharing what I see and hear and feel and learn is because I know from being a mom and from being the yogi that I am, that the most powerful way to share your love and influence is by, in Japanese we say, senaka o miseru. It's to show your back. In other words, it's to model it in the way that we live. I'm happy to show and to share these practices and tools that have transformed my life for the better. I just wouldn't be here if it hadn't been for the yoga and the meditation and the journaling in my life. Because you all know that my life has been a messy mess of turbulent waters. There's grief, loss, confusion, ambiguous loss. There's total devastation, wanting to die, and then following the light and rebuilding from there. And I guess the thing about the pedestal that pains me so much is that it goes directly against this, my message, that if I, through my life, my turbulent life, can keep finding love, joy, and expansion in the middle of all of this and through all of this, so can you. And that's not hierarchy. That's not separation. That's humanity. Yeah. So this week, here is the realness of the Kizuki. It's that when we place someone above us, we don't just elevate them. Sometimes we step down, and there is a difference between pure respect, a level respect when we respect each other as we respect ourselves, and then idolizing or giving away power, which is a distortion to say someone else has something in some way that's better than or more special than what you have. So this is our point to question ourselves and to take home today. Because if you've ever placed someone above you, we must ask ourselves, what part of you stepped down to do so? And in a world obsessed with climbing, maybe the real revolution is standing level. Thank you for listening. If you missed the recent Kizuki Journaling online session, the on-demand replay is now available at maey.live under On Demand. And if you'd like to be the first to know when the next live session opens, you can sign up for my weekly newsletter at the bottom of maey.live or kizukijournaling.com.